Just a few words about ideation. I want to start with the notion that ideation is not a step. It's not a specific project step, that it's a constant. That it is not something that happens at the early stages of a project when we do planning and brainstorming strategy, and once finalized, it never happens. Digital projects just don't work this way. Projects requiring strategy don't work this way. Projects evolve, they change, the scope evolves. Um, we cannot assume that we know what we're going to do, what we're going to build, because the technology and everything else proceeds at such a fast pace. Oftentimes we do something for the first time. So again, ideation, it is not a specific step in a process, it is a constant. And as such, the typical way how we do brainstorming doesn't work either. Uh, Most companies do brainstorming in this way. Give me a list of ideas and I'm going to see if it addresses all of our problems. Well, 90% of the times there is no perfect idea. There isn't an idea that at its very birth addresses all the problems. And so meetings very often, brainstorm meetings very often feel like not so much as idea generation meetings as much as idea execution meetings. It's the place where we shoot down all the ideas. So for a long time, I've believed in this ideation process. Um, it looks like a bow tie, doesn't matter. At the end, we're talking about is 5 steps. Everything starts with simplifying their requirements, because we do have a tendency to overcomplicate. We seek for perfection early, and we don't let it evolve, we don't let it happen. So the idea where before we look for ideas that for solutions that address a specific problem, we look to simplify what the actual problem is. It's an effort of us trying to figure out what is the core, what are the core requirements, and that has to happen first, because it allows us for a greater number of ideas that happens after. And so the second step is really to ideate together, not to ideate in isolation, and ideate together as far as every type of a professional that is involved in that specific industry, that specific client, that specific project, whether they are a designer, whether they are strategists, whether they develop content, it doesn't matter. Um, Client services, anyone, including the client, to ideate together, come up with the ideas. And when we're evaluating ideas, again, it is not a shootout, it is a comparison. So I often use a grid to compare, how different ideas perform better or worse, in terms of from each other, on a specific number of variables, whether it is branding, but it can also be cost. Uh, at the end, they also have a habit of merging and of combining and of triggering each other. So next step that you have is when you do have an idea that scores the highest, that is comparatively the best, you look for ways to amplify. And this is the step where you look for not only how a specific best idea can overcome all the list, your grocery list of problems, but also how it scales. How scalable is the idea when it is 10 times larger, 100 times larger, but also smaller? Just to get a full vision of what it will look like. And the last one is you pilot. You don't assume that you know whether an idea A will overcome a problem. You test whether an idea A will overcome a problem. And you test ideally with your real users. So instead of using your bias, you use a pilot project, an experiment to say,